What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch, making some money, investing in fractional real estate online as usual. Today, I'm going to just cover, hopefully pretty quickly, a topic that I see discussed a lot in the Lofty Discord, which is compounding of returns. I think people talk about it a lot on Lofty because you get paid daily rent, and so you do have the ability to reinvest that rent every single day, and so that you get daily compounding of your cash flow versus on a site like I'm on Mogul right here. I might only get it, I get paid out monthly and I could reinvest monthly, right? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what compounding is. I know a lot of you probably know this, but I think, um, one of the things I talked about doing is just trying to talk about things that I take for granted, right? Like, I mean, there are certain ideas that, like, I think everybody thinks about compounding the same way I do and has experience dealing with these numbers a lot. And maybe that's not necessarily true. So I'm going to quickly talk about what it is and then sort of compare what is monthly versus, daily versus annual compounding look like. And then, really kind of dig into how big of an advantage is this really, and maybe why on Lofty it's actually um, not as big of an advantage as you might think, although it might be. It depends on why how things are handled. But first, okay, so I did some math. So what does compounding mean? So if and I'm using 10.3% here just because that happens to be the cash on cash return on this one particular property that I had up on Mogul. And so if I was getting a 10.3 cash on cash return, but it wasn't compounded, it's just annual. That would mean that if I put $100 in at the end of the year, I'd have $10.30 in interest. That's 10.3% of $100. And so I'd have $110.30. And then, you know, then that's assuming that at the end of the year that you get to reinvest that money. And then the next time you can do it. Now, that's only compounded annually, meaning, you're really just calculating the interest once a year. You do the math one time. If you do it monthly, the interest that goes in each month is actually, let me move this a little so you can see my calculation here. But it's actually just that same interest rate, but let me double click on that so it highlights it. It's that same interest rate, but divided by 12, because you're not getting the full interest. You're not getting 10.3% per month. You're getting 1/12 of 10.3%. That's how it's calculated. But the next month you get 10.3% times the higher amount. So your interest is getting interest on it, right? And so if you look at annual or monthly versus, so I'm using the 10. Hopefully this isn't too confusing. I just put this together real quick. So this is the percent. I'm using the same percent for all my calculations, but what pops up on top is the actual input. So on a month, if you compound monthly, but at 10.3% interest rate, you end up getting this 10.8% is your total return because your interest got interest. And so then I also did a row, and you can see I went all the way down. You have a whole year of compounding. If you have, and this is what it looks like on Lofty, where you have those daily rent, and if you do reinvest it every single day, instead of getting 10.3% like you did annually or 10.8% like you did monthly, you get 10.85%. So you can see there's actually not a huge advantage of going daily over monthly. You get a big pop from the annually to monthly, but not nearly as big of a pop from the monthly to the daily. Now, if we were making very large returns, okay, if we're doing 20%, I mean, this is still pretty close, right? You have to get up to about 50% before you're even, or let's see, I think it's less than that. 40%. Yeah, at 40%, you're basically getting 48% versus 49%. You can see in every case your monthly is much better than your annual, but it's nowhere near as good as but your monthly and daily are never end up being that far apart. And again, this assumes that you reinvest your rent every single day, or if you do it monthly, you just have to reinvest your rent every single month. So when people start talking about this as if it's some huge advantage of the Lofty site, I think it's cool to get daily rent, but I don't necessarily think, I mean, you can see, you're just not doing that much better, right? And so, and I do end up accumulating. This isn't actually mostly rent. I sold some stuff today, but I do end up accumulating balance, every few days. So I'm certainly not reinvesting every single day. Uh, well, let me go back to this. So you're definitely in both cases getting to reinvest much more often than if you bought a property in real life, right? So if you think about if you buy investment properties in real life as you receive that cash flow, you don't have enough each month to go and buy another whole property until your portfolio gets really huge, right? But with fractional real estate investing, you can do it. You could reinvest every single month, regardless of how much your rent is. If it's mogul, you have to have $250 a month in order to do it. Actually, though, I think you can just click. I think you can do auto investing, and then it doesn't have to be that large. I'm not positive because I've never clicked on that option. Yeah, the auto reinvest. Because the reason I don't do that is because I like to control what I'm investing in. I'm not just buying every single thing. So I don't know. I haven't turned that on. I have no idea how that works. I just get a little worried about doing automatic things where it's not super clear. I should probably talk to my rep there and see how, the guy who answers all my questions and see what he can tell me about that. But so, you can see the math of it. You're not getting a very big difference. But then also, that assumes you go and reinvest every day. And if you have a relatively small rent payout, because, most of my properties I'm buying and selling, non-performing properties. And so I don't have a ton of opportunity. I don't get a ton of rent every day. I think I get like less. Oh, I know I get less than $4 every day on most days. Um, so not a ton anyway, right? So it has to accumulate for a little while before I buy the next one. But that is just sort of because I have a portfolio that is focused on the buying discounted tokens and picking up equity, not necessarily on the yield. But I think even if I had, uh, I guess you could have one where you could afford to buy a token or two every single day. But it's just not going to be perfect, and you have to have a token that's priced in a way that you actually want it, right? Sometimes the properties you like a lot, like let me see where to go. Like this Andover property. You, if you know the story of this yield isn't, it's a one-time thing, but I don't necessarily want to reinvest at such a big price this month. I'd rather wait until next month anyway. So because of that, I think it's not really the as helpful as I think a lot of people think. Uh, it is I think the feature makes it interesting, so we don't have to have like the equivalent of an ex dividend date. So like if you trade stocks that pay dividends, they have a specific date that the dividend gets paid, and around that date, if you buy it the day before, or the stock the day before, and then you sell it the next day, you will have collected the dividend, but typically the price of the stock drops by the amount that the dividend is paid, and it goes up as that dividend accumulates, and then so it goes up and down. So the price moves quite a bit. By doing the daily rent, you don't get the same fluctuation around one date where you get paid out, although we get plenty of fluctuation in general on here. So I think it's helpful to create a little bit of a smoothing of the price points, but I don't know necessarily. I don't really think. I mean, it's even if you're very diligent about reinvesting, it's having a very small impact. Let's say you're getting a 20% return, right? It's having a very small 21.94 versus 22.13, a very small impact on um, your returns at the end of each year. It's not nothing, but it's not. I think it's whenever I hear somebody say talk about this as if it's one of the main benefits of the platform, getting paid daily rent is I think that it's people that don't fully grasp how the math of it works, and they just there are some people I'm sure that think that they're getting their whatever percent. If something's compounded monthly, they think they're getting it monthly or something, right? The whatever the percent is, which is clearly not true. But I think in general, I just wanted to clear that up. I think it's a cool feature that they have, but it's not. You're just not getting that big of a getting that big of a shift. Now, I still think though that both platforms are, in any of the platforms where you're getting payouts regularly, or where you're getting, where you're, even on ground floor, your interest, it does compound, right? It's not simple interest; it just accumulates and you're paid out. But it automatically, is that true? Yeah, it automatically though builds on itself. So, um, now that I'm saying it, I'm second guessing myself a little bit. I'll have to go back and look, but I'm fairly certain that's how it's working. Um, but yeah, oh, so if I forgot to mention, please like and subscribe. I appreciate it if you've watched the video to this point. If you haven't already, please join our Discord so we can talk about, any of these fractional real estate investing topics, any of the platforms that I'm on. I do have links in the description to this video to that Discord, and then also to all the platforms where I'm currently investing. Do your own due diligence. Just because I invest on a particular site doesn't mean that you should. And the same thing about individual properties. Just because I have something in my portfolio does not mean that you should buy it. In fact, some of these I wish I hadn't bought. If they're not all winners. Although at the moment, I'm very happy with a lot of them. I got some good payouts coming on some of these that are set to sell in real life. And so, anyway, I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about this. If you thought this was a dumb subject and you think everybody knows about it, please put that in the comments, because I'd like to know. But if this is something you haven't really thought about, you didn't know the difference between the math there, I'd like to hear that too, right? Just let me know, like, I didn't realize, that daily and monthly isn't that different, but both of them are significantly better than annually. That's I think this surprises people, right? Because jumping from 1 to 12 is a much bigger move than jumping from 12 to 365. Um, and honestly, I don't know why it works that way. It is just math, but um, and that's the thing. And there's even another way to do it. When I used to service commercial mortgages, you had, you could do it annually, which never happened. You could do it monthly. Sometimes you'd have daily, and then you'd have, like, I can't think of what it's called, like continually, right? Like, so it's just a constant um, compounding, and I don't really even understand how the math on that works, because I don't know what that means. But like, there ends up just being this limit to where, like, it's because it's such a tiny fraction, it's not. It doesn't end up having nearly the impact that it sounds like it should. So yeah, I remember the first time I did this math, it was surprising to me, but over time, it's just something that lives in my brain and I understand. And so I don't know, because I see this conversation so often, it made me realize this is another thing that I think some people are getting wrong, or some people are thinking about, are giving too much credit for one site over another for it. And I think, if you've watched a lot of my videos, that I'm not an either or person. I don't think you should pick Lofty over Mogul, or over Ground Floor, or over, any of the other ones that we talked about. I think you should pick, or for me, what I'm trying to do is invest across several sites. I'm going to figure out which ones work the absolute best for me. And what I've kind of, decided on is that they work well for different things. But I'm still experimenting with several. And then once I have the ones that I feel really confident in, I'll go ahead and deploy a lot of capital in those, and start to move some significant assets onto them. And once I'm really confident that I will continue to get the payouts that I have been. But so far, Mogul has done a lot to create trust, as far as in doing what they say they're going to do, and producing the results that I expect. But it's still very early, and you can tell. If you saw my most recent Mogul update, I did have some dips in the performance of a couple of properties. Um, Lofty is a lot different than that, right? I have a lot less confidence in things working the way I expect them to. But at the same time, I think that the mayhem on that site creates a lot of opportunity. Um, I don't know if that's the right way to think about it, but the inefficiencies, and the some of the non-intuitive stuff about it, just in the and I think also too, I think the clients, the customers that they've attracted to. I think they have an interesting pool of investors, and that has some effect on it too. But anyway, it's not. I didn't want to do this to be like, look, it's not. That's not a great selling point. I think it is something that interesting that Lofty's doing, but it's certainly not. We're not getting the benefit that it seems like some people think that we are. That's really all I have to say about that. So until next time. What? Oh, yeah. Please also, if you're still watching now, I really appreciate it because I know I thought I was going to be done and then I rambled for 5 more minutes. Um, I know it's a silly sign off, but I never know how to end. And so the making mistakes thing, I started doing that way back when I was doing my container home. It seems to fit because, there's lots of times where I'm talking about something and then I have to go back and do a correction. But if you think it's stupid that I say that every time, tell me that because, I don't know. I've been all the YouTube or most of the YouTube that I watch is with my kid, and so that's aimed towards kids, and so they have like a lot of little things that they do, and yeah, it's kind of silly. I know it's kind of silly, but I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and I love that our community is growing and that it seems like we're actually having an impact on certain changes going on in different platforms, and I'd love to see more of that. But yeah, okay, that's it for real now. That's it. So until next time, gonna keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.